This is the Indus River, a place where stories don't always end. They disappear. Two men stand facing each other, one carrying the final breaths of a dying empire, Jalal ad-Din, and the other, if death had another name, it would be Genghis Khan. No one speaks, but everyone understands what this moment means. The collision of two worlds. Behind one man, nothing is left, and behind the other, nothing is meant to survive. This may look like the end of the story, but it isn't, because this story began long before the Indus River, long before the war, long before the bloodshed. It began with a caravan that never reached its destination. The year is 1218. On the eastern borders of the Khwarazmian Empire, a massive cloud of dust appeared on the horizon. But these were not the banners of an invading army. It was a caravan, 450 merchants, 500 camels carrying silk, gold, silver, and treasures from the east. They had not come to conquer, they had come to trade. Genghis Khan, already ruler of a vast empire, did not want another war. He sent a message to the Khwarazmian Sultan. I am the sovereign of the sunrise, and you are the sovereign of the sunset. Let there be peace between us. But the caravan eventually reached the border city of Otrar, and there stood a man named Inalchuk. To him, these were not merchants. Perhaps he saw spies, or perhaps he saw wealth. He ignored the warnings around him. He ignored the laws of hospitality, and in a single bloody order, the entire caravan was massacred. The silk turned red, the gold was seized, and Inalchuk believed he had protected the empire. But he did not understand. He had not killed merchants. He had invited a storm, and that storm was Genghis Khan. The year is 1218. His capital was Gurganj, and the man who ruled the Khwarazmian Empire was Muhammad of Khwarazm. Genghis Khan did not arrive with an army. He arrived with trade, a caravan carrying silk, gold, silver, and a proposal for peace. But in the border city of Otrar, the caravan was slaughtered. Still, Genghis Khan did not choose war. He sent a final message to the Shah. One simple demand: hand over the governor responsible, and peace would remain. But the Shah chose pride over caution. The envoy was killed. The others were humiliated and sent back. And in that moment, this was no longer about merchants, or trade, or diplomacy. An empire had just signed its own death sentence. And the news reached Genghis Khan. This time, there was nothing left to stop him. He stood there, silent. The wind moved across the steppe, while thousands of riders waited in silence. No loud command was given, no scream filled the air, only a movement. Genghis Khan slowly raised his hand, and in that moment, the earth itself began to tremble. An army started to move, the kind the world had never seen before. From the heart of the Mongolian steppe, they rose like a black storm, fast, ruthless, unstoppable. And one by one, cities stood in their path. The first was Bukhara. Bukhara, a wealthy city at the heart of the Silk Road, a city that still had no idea what was coming for it. When the Mongols arrived, silence fell over the streets. Days passed, and fear slowly spread through the city, until finally, everything began to break. And then, he entered. Genghis Khan, calm, silent, walking through a city that no longer felt alive. No one moved. Only their eyes followed him. And then his voice echoed across Bukhara. "I am the punishment of God, and if you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you." After that, a silence settled over the city, heavier than the sound of war itself. But Bukhara was only the beginning. Far beyond the smoke, Samarkand was still standing. After the fall of Bukhara, fear reached Samarkand before the Mongols did. Muhammad Khwarazm Shah still had a great army, massive walls, and one of the richest cities in the world. But when Genghis Khan began approaching Samarkand, everything changed. Some soldiers surrendered before the battle even began. The city slowly began losing its spirit. And then, Muhammad Khwarazm Shah fled. He abandoned Samarkand and left the city behind. You might think the Mongols simply invaded, that they were nothing more than savage warriors who looted and destroyed everything in their path. But that wasn't what made them the greatest conquerors in history. Their greatest weapon wasn't their swords. It wasn't their horses. It wasn't even the size of their army. Their greatest weapon was fear. A fear that often reached cities long before they did. Sometimes, the first Mongol rider hadn't even appeared on the horizon, yet the city had already been defeated, because its people had heard the story of the city that fell before them. Genghis Khan understood one truth better than almost any commander in history. If you can conquer your enemy's mind, you no longer have to fight to conquer their city. After Muhammad Khwarazm Shah fled, Samarkand offered almost no resistance. Genghis Khan entered the royal palace, but instead of ordering it to be looted, he ordered a great celebration, a celebration of victory. As music echoed through the halls and torchlight flickered across the walls, he slowly walked toward the palace window. Before him lay an empire that would never be the same again. And perhaps that single word, the past, changed everything. But to understand him, we have to go back. In a world where survival was the only law, where the cold could break your bones and weakness meant death, a child was born who would one day change the course of history. According to the oldest surviving account of his life, The Secret History of the Mongols, when he was born, there was a clot of blood clenched in his tiny hand, a sign of a destiny written in blood. His name was Temujin. His father, Yasuge, named him after a captured enemy. From the very beginning, his life was tied to war. He did not grow up in palaces. He grew up on the endless Mongolian steppe, among wind, cold, and hunger, where nature itself was the cruelest teacher of all. At just 9 years old, his father was poisoned by enemies, and in a single moment, everything collapsed. His tribe, the very people who should have protected him, abandoned him and his family. A mother and her children left alone against a merciless world. To stay alive, they fished, dug for roots, and hunted whatever they could find. Every single day was a battle against death. But hunger doesn't just break the body, it changes the soul. And one day, he did the unthinkable. He killed his own half-brother, Bekta, not out of hatred, but to survive. But this wasn't the end. He was captured, forced into slavery, bound in a wooden kang, like an animal. But some people are not meant to be broken. In the darkness of night, he escaped, silent, relentless, and with every step, he moved closer to a destiny that would change the world. This is not the story of a king. It is the story of survival, of a boy who grew up in hunger, betrayal, and violence, and made a choice to either die or become something the world had never seen before. He returned to his family. Everything was the same steppe, the same hunger, the same harsh life. But inside him, something had changed. He no longer thought like before. Every movement was calculated, every sound mattered, and he trusted no one easily. Some time later, he lost his horse and went alone into the steppe to find it. That's where he met a man named Bo-Orchu. Not from his tribe, not from his blood, but he helped him without asking anything in return. And in that moment, something important began: loyalty. But enough about the past. Let's return to Samarkand. Muhammad Khwarazm Shah had fled, but the war wasn't over. One man still stood between Genghis Khan and complete victory: Jalal ad-Din, the Shah's son. Genghis Khan knew as long as Jalal ad-Din lived, the Khwarazmian Empire could still fight. So he gave one simple order: find him. Now the question was, where was Jalal ad-Din? He wasn't hiding. He wasn't running. While his father fled from one city to another, Jalal ad-Din rode south, gathering the shattered remnants of the Khwarazmian army. Every soldier who had survived, every commander who refused to surrender, everyone who was still willing to fight. In Ghazni, he began rebuilding an army. His empire was gone, his capital was lost, but he still possessed something far more dangerous: hope. And Genghis Khan knew, as long as that hope remained alive, the war was far from over. At last, Jalal ad-Din had rebuilt his army. Then, at the Battle of Parwan, he achieved what no one believed was possible. For the first time, a great Mongol army was defeated in open battle. News of the victory spread across the east, and for the first time, hope returned. But victory didn't last. Only days later, Jalal ad-Din's commanders turned against one another, arguing over the spoils of war. A single dispute tore his army apart from within. When news of the Mongol defeat reached Genghis Khan, everything changed. He would no longer leave this war to his generals. This time, he would lead the hunt himself. And there was only one target: Jalal ad-Din. Jalal ad-Din fled south with what remained of his army. But this time, he wasn't being hunted by Mongol generals. He was being hunted by Genghis Khan himself. Across deserts, through mountains, and across endless valleys, the chase continued. There was nowhere left to hide. Every day, the Mongol army drew closer, until finally, there was nowhere left to run. Ahead flowed the Indus River. Behind him stood the greatest conqueror the world had ever seen. The final battle was about to begin. And now, we return to where our story began: the Indus River. A place where stories don't always end. They disappear. Jalal ad-Din had nowhere left to run. Behind him, the army of Genghis Khan closed in with every passing moment. Before him, the mighty Indus River crashed against the cliffs below. One by one, his soldiers fell. His commanders were gone. His army had been shattered, but he refused to surrender. When he realized there was no path to victory, he made one final decision. He tightened his grip on his sword, turned his horse toward the edge of the cliff, and charged. For a single heartbeat, time itself seemed to stop. Then, before Genghis Khan, before thousands of Mongol warriors, Jalal ad-Din and his horse leaped from the cliff into the roaring waters of the Indus. Silence fell across the battlefield. No one had ever witnessed such courage. Against all odds, he survived. He reached the opposite bank and disappeared into the mountains beyond. Genghis Khan never took his eyes off him. Then, according to the chroniclers, he turned to his sons and said, "A father should have such a son." The Khwarazmian Empire had fallen, but its last prince had become a legend. This wasn't the end. It was only the first page. The real Genghis Khan hasn't even arrived yet. If you enjoyed this journey, leave a like, share it, and subscribe, because in the next chapter, history will never be the same again.